Ever wondered how a software developer retired at 35 with a net worth of nearly $1 million? Meet Steve Adcock, a financial wizard who traded in his coding skills for a life of frugality and financial freedom. Let's dive deep into Steve's life and financial lessons. First lesson: say yes more than no. Steve Adcock's journey to financial independence began with a revelation. Early in his career, he often found himself hiding behind his potential, afraid to step out of his comfort zone. The fear of failure, the dread of rejection, held him back from taking risks that could have propelled him forward. Like many of us, Steve was afraid of the unknown, of what could go wrong. He hesitated to take on extra responsibilities or accept promotions. He chose the safer path, the path of least resistance. But as he navigated his way through the labyrinth of life, he made a profound realization. His constant aversion to risk was in fact much more damaging than any rejection he was trying to avoid. Imagine being offered a promotion, a chance to step up, to grow, to learn. But you say no. Why? Because you're afraid. Afraid of the workload, the pressure, the possibility of failing. But in dodging this opportunity, you're not just avoiding a potential failure. You're also missing out on a chance to grow, to evolve, to become better. Steve realized that by saying no to opportunities, he was closing doors to potential success. He was stunting his own growth, limiting his own potential. It was a harsh realization, but it was also a turning point. He realized that if he had been more open to taking risks, if he had said yes more than no, he could have accelerated his journey towards financial independence. His story teaches us a valuable lesson. Risks are not always detrimental. They can be opportunities in disguise, chances to learn, to grow, to succeed. So don't be afraid to say yes. Don't let the fear of failure hold you back. Embrace the unknown, take the leap, and who knows, you might just land in a place better than you could have ever imagined. If he had taken more risks, he could have retired even sooner. So next time an opportunity knocks on your door, don't be quick to say no. Instead, consider saying yes. It might just be the decision that propels you towards your goals. Second lesson: stop trying to keep up with the competition. Steve Adcock, a self-made millionaire who retired at the age of 35, admits to having fallen into what he refers to as the comparison trap. This trap is one we're all familiar with. It's the habit of comparing our own progress, skills, and accomplishments to those of our colleagues, peers, and industry competitors. Steve confesses that during the early years of his career, he spent a substantial amount of time and energy focusing on how he measured up to others. He was constantly sizing himself up against his colleagues, always wondering if he was falling short, if he was good enough, if he was as successful as they were. He admits that this was a highly unproductive way of thinking. It drained his energy, diluted his focus, and often left him feeling inadequate and anxious. But as he matured, both personally and professionally, Steve realized that this was not a race against others. Instead, it was a journey towards his own personal goals and dreams. The only competition he had was with himself. He understood that he had his own pace, his own rhythm, and his own unique set of strengths and capabilities. He may not have been the smartest person in the office, but he was hardworking and determined. This shift in perspective was liberating. Free from the shackles of comparison, Steve could focus on his own growth and development. He could devote more time to refining his skills, honing his strengths, and overcoming his weaknesses. He could concentrate on becoming the best version of himself, rather than trying to become a clone of someone else. And this, he believes, is one of the keys to his success. When he stopped worrying about what others were doing, he could focus on refining his own skills. He could carve his own path, write his own story, and ultimately achieve his own version of success. So if you find yourself caught in the comparison trap, remember Steve's advice. The only person you should be trying to outdo is the person you were yesterday. Third lesson: make decisions for yourself and stop trying to please everyone. When we start unpacking Steve Adcock's journey, we find an interesting pattern. Steve had a habit of constantly worrying about what others thought of his actions. Friends, family, colleagues. Their opinions seemed to weigh heavily on his shoulders. This is a trap many of us fall into: the constant need for validation, the fear of judgment, and the desire to fit in. But Steve found this way of living to be exhausting. It was like a never-ending treadmill, running after approval, trying to meet expectations, and yet never reaching the finish line. In this chaotic race, he realized he was losing his sense of self, his individuality, and his happiness. So what did Steve do? He decided to take a step back, to pause, and to reassess his priorities. He asked himself, who am I living for? Whose happiness am I chasing? This introspection led Steve to a transformative realization. He needed to start making decisions for himself, not for others. And that's exactly what Steve did. He started choosing to do what made him happy, what brought him joy, and what aligned with his personal goals and values. He stopped trying to please everyone around him. He stopped worrying about what others would think or say. Instead, he started living for himself. This shift in mindset was liberating for Steve. He felt a sense of freedom, a sense of authenticity that he had never experienced before. He was no longer bound by the chains of societal expectations or the fear of judgment. He was free to be himself, to follow his own path, and to pursue his own dreams. In the end, Steve's story teaches us a valuable lesson. Making decisions for yourself is not about being selfish or disregarding others. It's about understanding your worth, respecting your desires, and prioritizing your happiness. It's about being true to yourself and living a life that is uniquely yours. When he stopped worrying about others' opinions, he started living for himself. It's a lesson we could all stand to learn from. Fourth lesson, cut expenses and try to save more than 50% of your income. Now, this might sound a bit extreme to some, but remember, we're learning from a self-made millionaire who retired at 35. The typical financial advice might suggest saving around 20% of your income. But Steve Adcock, our early retired software developer turned finance guru, cranked that number up to 50%. And how did he do that? Well, it wasn't by making it rain money. It was by making some serious lifestyle changes that allowed him to save more. The first step was to understand where the money was going. Steve and his wife Courtney took a hard look at their spending habits. They realized that a lot of their income was going into things they didn't really need. So they started cutting back. They stopped buying things just because they could. They cut out monthly subscriptions that weren't essential. They streamlined their grocery budget, focusing on what was necessary rather than what was nice to have. One of the significant changes they made was limiting their restaurant expenses to $50 a month. Yes, you heard it right, $50 a month. They traded expensive meals out for home-cooked dinners and found not only did they save money, but they also enjoyed the process of cooking and eating at home. But it wasn't all about cutting back. They also focused on increasing their income. They looked for opportunities to earn more, and they invested wisely. They put their money to work for them instead of the other way around. In essence, they turned frugality into an art form. It's not about depriving yourself, but about making smart, intentional choices with your money. It's about understanding the difference between wants and needs and prioritizing the latter. And the result of their frugal living? They accelerated their journey to retirement. They were able to save more, invest more, and ultimately retire early. By living frugally and cutting unnecessary expenses, they accelerated their journey to retirement. And that, my friends, is a lesson worth learning. Fifth lesson, be more self-aware and practice emotional intelligence. The journey towards financial freedom is not just about numbers and dollar signs. It's equally about understanding yourself, your emotions, and how these influence your decisions. This brings us to Steve Adcock's fifth lesson, the significance of emotional intelligence, or EQ, and self-awareness in navigating the path to success. For a long time, Steve believed that intelligence quotient, or IQ, was the primary determinant of success. However, as he delved deeper into his journey towards financial independence, he realized the fundamental role of EQ. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in positive ways to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. But how does EQ relate to financial decisions? Well, think about it. Are you a spontaneous shopper, buying items on a whim, driven by the thrill of a sale? Or do you meticulously plan each purchase, evaluating the need, cost, and long-term value? These behaviors are influenced by your EQ. Understanding your emotional responses can help you control impulsive spending, leading to better financial decisions. Similarly, self-awareness is crucial. It's about understanding your strengths, weaknesses, motivations, and emotions. Self-aware people are capable of making conscious decisions that align with their long-term goals. In Steve's case, his self-awareness led him to recognize his desire for a simpler, frugal life, which ultimately contributed to his early retirement. Self-awareness and EQ also contribute to overall life satisfaction. They enable us to build stronger relationships, be more content, and handle stress better. After all, isn't that what we all want? A life of contentment, free from financial worries. So, as we journey towards financial freedom, let's not forget to invest in our emotional intelligence and self-awareness. It's not just about how much we save or earn, but also about how we understand and manage ourselves. By being more self-aware and emotionally intelligent, Steve was able to make better financial decisions. It's about time we consider doing the same, don't you think? To sum it up, here are Steve's 5 life and financial lessons. Each one comes from a man who, at the age of 35, chose to step away from the traditional career path and embrace a life that was uniquely his own. Firstly, Steve emphasized the importance of saying yes to opportunities. He admitted that, in the early years of his career, he often hid behind his potential for fear of failure. But he learned that avoiding risk was more damaging than any rejection he was trying to protect himself from. If he had been more open to taking on extra responsibilities and accepting promotions, he could have increased his savings and potentially retired even earlier. Secondly, Steve advised against the comparison trap. He confessed to frequently comparing himself to colleagues and other industry professionals, a mindset he later realized was counterproductive. He learned to move at his own pace, focusing on his strengths and capabilities. When he stopped worrying about what others were doing, he was able to dedicate more time to refining his skills. The third lesson is about making decisions for oneself. Steve shared how he spent too much energy worrying about what others, including friends, family, and colleagues, thought of his decisions. This self-made millionaire said it became exhausting to constantly worry about others' opinions. Once he let go of that concern, he started making choices that brought him happiness. The fourth lesson is about cutting expenses and saving more. Steve, who achieved early retirement, stated that saving 50% of one's income can significantly speed up the journey towards financial goals. He credited his frugal lifestyle to his wife, a committed saver. They stopped buying unnecessary items, eliminated monthly subscriptions, and streamlined their grocery budget. One major change they made was to limit their restaurant expenses to $50 a month. The final lesson is about self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Steve discussed the importance of being more self-aware and practicing emotional intelligence. It's not just about IQ. EQ plays a crucial role in personal and professional success. He believed that understanding one's emotions and how they affect one's actions is a key factor in achieving a fulfilling life. Remember, it's not just about the money. It's about living a fulfilling and satisfying life. Steve's story is a testament to the idea that success doesn't have to follow a traditional path. It's about making choices that align with your values and aspirations. So let's take these lessons to heart and create our own versions of success.